Okay, I want you to imagine a scenario for a second. You're just, living your life, going to work, seeing friends, doing the usual daily grind, and then suddenly you're hit with something. But it's not quite a diagnosis, it's just a sensation, a collection of symptoms. And we aren't talking about some run-of-the-mill cold or, I don't know, a strained ankle here.
Right. We're talking about something that feels profoundly wrong.
Yeah.
Like it came straight out of a sci-fi movie or something.
Exactly. And you're dealing with it for weeks, maybe months. Your doctors are baffled. They run all the standard blood panels and everything comes back normal.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe your iron is a little low, but on paper, you're fine. But you feel like you're dying.
Mm-hmm.
It's mysterious. It's persistent. It feels like it's permanently etched into your reality. And then just as mysteriously as it arrived, boom, it vanishes. Gone.
And the medical community, they'll probably call that a miracle.
Wow.
Or, spontaneous remission. Sometimes they just shrug and say, well, viruses are weird. And you feel invincible, like you've somehow cheated the system. But the question we're grappling with today is, what if it wasn't a miracle? What if it wasn't even a standard biological event to begin with?
That is the wild, fascinating premise we are unpacking today. We're looking at a very specific, very dense piece of source material. It's titled Undetected, No Face, No Case Article Series, Volume 1, Warfare Tactics Introduction.
Mm-hmm.
It's written by Kandayia Ali from I Am Omni and the Ophanim Society. And I have to say, right off the bat, this is not our usual medical journal breakdown.
No, it really isn't. This is a unique piece of writing. It bridges a gap that we almost never see crossed in mainstream analysis.
Right.
It connects complex PTSD, CPTSD, unexplained medical symptoms, and what the author calls esoteric ideology.
And it argues they're all different languages for the same thing. So, the mission for today's deep dives is to explore this theory, the idea that what we often dismiss as just, bad luck or chronic illness might actually be something called spiritual imprinting or even hidden warfare. Now, before we get into the heavy stuff, we have to address the disclaimer in the text.
Oh, absolutely. A crucial point. The author is very clear. This information is not a substitute for professional medical support. If you are sick, go to a doctor. These concepts are presented as spiritual insights and supportive aids, not medical directives.
Got it. We're analyzing a philosophy here, not writing a prescription.
Exactly.
So let's start with that title, No Face, No Case. I mean, I usually hear that in crime dramas or rap lyrics. It implies if there's no witness, no face, there's no case to prosecute. It's about getting away with something. What's it doing in a spiritual text?
Well, it's surprisingly similar, but Ali is applying it to the energetic realm. In this context, no face, no case refers to using unseen forces to target a victim. The whole idea is that the attack is designed to leave no physical evidence, no bruises, no open wounds, nothing that would hold up in a literal court of law.
That sounds incredibly insidious. It's the perfect crime because the weapon is invisible. But what are we talking about here? Ghosts, bad vibes. What's the actual mechanism?
The author describes these as petrification tactics.
Petrification.
Yeah, and I think that word is so important. Petrification. Turning to stone, stagnation. The intent isn't a swift knockout blow. It's about causing a slow, painful decline. This could be mental deterioration or a physical breakdown. And the kicker. The source suggests these tactics are often used by the people you would least expect.
The whole hidden in plain sight thing. But okay, if I'm the victim and there are no bruises, how do I know it's happened? How does it actually work, if not through, blunt force? If I go to a doctor and say, I feel petrified, they're going to send me to a psychiatrist.
And this is where the real nugget of the text is. The mechanism isn't magic, it's mimicry. The warfare mimics natural biological breakdowns, so it doesn't create some new, impossible disease that would alert a doctor that something is strange. It targets the victim's existing vulnerabilities.
So it's like water finding a crack in the pavement.
That's a great analogy. If you have a weak stomach, the attack hits there. If you're prone to anxiety, it amplifies that. It targets your vital organs and systems based on their current weakness. It's camouflage. It goes undetected because it looks just like the side effects of something else, prolonged stress, mental abuse, or just aging.
Which brings us right back to no face, no case. If my stomach hurts and I have a history of stomach issues, the doctor just treats the stomach. They don't look for a spiritual cause because the symptom looks familiar.
Precisely. It's designed to be dismissed, especially if the victim appears, civil and holds it together in public. The source argues that civil appearance actually works against you because it masks the severity of the internal attack.
You look fine, so everyone assumes
that you are fine. Meanwhile, you're crumbling internally.
That is unsettling.
Mm.
But the source doesn't just leave it at it's invisible good luck.
Mm.
It actually breaks down the symptoms. It says there are fingerprints if you know where to look.
Right. While the cause is invisible, the symptoms are very real, and the author lays out 4 arenas of attack: physical, behavioral, emotional, and thoughts or perception.
Okay, let's unpack these, starting with the physical. I think this is where most people would notice something first.
Yeah.
But we're not just talking about feeling tired, are we? The source gets pretty specific.
It really does. It describes these as random illnesses that resist any clear medical explanation. They fade in and out. But the specific red flags mentioned are fascinating. It lists things like face feeling hot, that specific flushing sensation, rapid pulse, nausea that just hangs around without a viral cause.
It also mentions breathlessness and susceptibility to mild illness.
That's how.
It sounds like your body is constantly fighting something, but it never quite wins or loses.
Stuck in battle mode. Ongoing fitful sleep is another big one. And if you look at that cluster hot face, racing heart, bad sleep, breathlessness physiologically, that's a state of constant arousal. Your autonomic nervous system is just firing off alarms. The body is reacting to an attack, even if the conscious mind has no idea there's a war on.
It's the body saying, we are unsafe, while the brain is saying, I'm just sitting on the couch.
Exactly. That disconnect must be exhausting.
Okay, moving to the second arena, behavioral. This one really struck me. Usually we think of our behavior as the one thing we do control. If I'm acting out, eating too much, skipping work, I blame myself. I lack discipline.
And that's the trap, according to Ali. The source argues that under this type of interference, your behavior changes not from personal choice, but from unseen interference. It's an external pressure that's impacting your energy and productivity.
So what does that look like? How do you tell the difference between I'm lazy and I'm being interfered with?
Look for the compulsion. The source talks about compulsive eating or sudden, unexplained appetite changes, impatience that feels foreign, carelessness. It's when you're watching yourself do something and you think, why am I doing this? This isn't me.
The list also included sudden tears and increased absenteeism.
Yeah.
Like you just physically cannot face the world.
Yes. Avoidance of places is a big one.
Yeah.
And also increased substance use, alcohol, drugs, whatever. The source frames this not just as a bad habit, but as self-medication against a spiritual heavy-handedness. You're trying to numb a sensation that isn't yours.
It's almost like the pilot of the plane is fighting with the controls. Okay, so then we have the emotional arena. How's that different from behavioral changes?
Well, behavior is what you do. Emotion is what you feel. This is where the distortion comes in. The emotional field gets twisted. The victim gets pulled into patterns that feel completely out of character.
Out of character. That seems to be the key phrase for this whole deep dive. We all have bad days, but this is a distinct dissonance.
It is. We are talking about deep despair, sudden self-blame, or extreme anger like rage that feels totally disproportionate to the situation. Loss of humor is another specific one mentioned.
That one's just sad. Losing the ability to laugh.
Yeah.
And feeling isolated.
And that's strategic isolation. If you feel guilt, shame, and low self-esteem, all symptoms listed here, you're way less likely to reach out for help. You retreat. You make the no-face, no-case tactic easier because you remove yourself from witnesses. You isolate yourself so the crime can continue.
Which brings us to the fourth arena. Thoughts and perception. The mind game. And honestly, this felt the most dangerous to me.
It is because it dictates how you interpret the other 3 arenas. The source describes this as the bending of reality. It's not just having a negative thought, it's that your perception itself gets clouded.
There's a term used here I found really interesting. Negative globalization. What does that mean?
It's a cognitive distortion where the victim feels that everything is wrong or doomed. It's not just, I made a mistake at work. It becomes, the world is ending, nothing will ever be right again, and I am a failure. A total collapse of perspective.
And muddled thinking. Brain fog.
Inability to make decisions, fear of failure, being oversensitive to criticism. Basically, your internal navigation system is scrambled. You can't trust your own read on reality. You start to gaslight yourself.
So if we look at all 4 of these together, the physical symptoms, the behavioral changes, the emotional rage, the mental fog, what's the synthesis? Because a lot of people might hear this and just say, well, that sounds like depression or burnout.
That's a fair challenge, but the distinction the author makes is the origin and the cluster. The synthesis is that these aren't just random bad days. They don't follow the typical path of burnout where you just need a vacation. The author is arguing that when you see the specific cluster, especially the out-of-character nature of it, you are looking at the fingerprints of hidden warfare. It's a coordinated attack.
But this is where the article pivots, and I think this is where it gets really challenging for the listener. Because up until now, we've been talking about an attack from the outside. But the source introduces a mechanism that keeps it going from the inside. It calls it looping.
This is the twist, and it's a difficult pill to swallow. Looping suggests that the reoccurrence of these ailments can become a self-inflicted hex.
A self-inflicted hess. That's strong language. It almost sounds like victim blaming. You're sick because you're hexing yourself. How does the author justify that?
It's less about blame and more about maintenance. The initial attack might be external, but the idea is that how we view ourselves, our worth, our strength, that can leave open portals for these toxic cycles to just replay endlessly.
So we're keeping the door open.
Worse, we might be inviting them back in, which leads to this concept of covert soul selling.
Okay, soul selling. Immediately I'm picturing a crossroads at midnight, signing a book in blood. But the source says it's not that dramatic, right?
No, not at all. And that's why it's covert. It doesn't happen in some dark ceremony. The source says it can be as simple as agreeing with negativity.
Agreeing with negativity. What's an example of that?
It happens when we speak destructive phrases over ourselves. The source gives specific examples. I'll never get better. Nothing ever works out for me. Maybe I deserve this.
Wow. I think we have all said things like that in our darkest moments. When you're in that much pain, it feels true.
Of course. It's a natural reaction to suffering. But the source argues that from a spiritual perspective, every one of those phrases is a contract in disguise.
A contract.
Yes. By speaking that limitation, you are giving direct access to the forces that benefit from your suffering. You're essentially saying, yes, I agree with this interference. This is who I am now. You can stay. Your own perception keeps the door wide open.
That is a terrifying thought, but also weirdly empowering. Because if I'm the one signing the contract, I can also be the one to tear it up.
That is exactly where the source goes next. It pivots from diagnosis to cure. It offers a way out.
So how do we break the loop? The source contrasts return to sender with return to self. Now I see return to sender, candles everywhere. It's a classic trope, reflect the bad energy back. Why does the author say that's not enough?
Because return to sender still engages with the attacker. It keeps you in the war. You're playing ping pong with toxic energy. You're still focused on them. The author argues that true healing requires a return to self.
What does that look like, return to self?
It's about reclaiming your sovereignty. It involves breaking the agreements. When you stop agreeing with the loop, when you stop saying, I'll never get better, and start saying, I am sovereign over my own vessel, the portal closes. The enemy loses its access point.
It also mentions naming the pattern. That seems important.
Crucial. You have to move from unseen case, where you're just a confused victim, to a recognized pattern. Once you name it, oh, this is that interference again, you strip away its invisibility, you stop reacting emotionally, and you start observing strategically.
I want to circle back to the medical aspect here for a second, because the source makes a bold claim about what happens when you do this. It uses the word calcify.
It does. It says through the lens of imprinting, those symptoms, the racing heart, the pain, they are signals of interference. They start as energy. But if you ignore the signal, or worse, agree with it, the source claims the imprint calcifies into a lifelong diagnosis.
It calcifies, like it hardens from energy into matter, from a feeling into a tumor.
Right, that's the theory. It goes from a software problem to a hardware problem. But with reversal, with that return to self, the source says the so-called incurable becomes curiously absent.
And that brings us right back to the miracle we started with.
Exactly. The doctor calls it a miracle. The author calls it the natural return of sovereignty. The interference was acknowledged and dissolved. The burden was lifted because, as the text says, it was never yours to carry.
That is such a powerful reframing. It shifts the question entirely. It stops being, how do I fix this broken body, and becomes, how do I evict this intruder?
It really does. The source concludes by saying, the real question isn't, what disease do I have? Instead, it asks, whose intention am I carrying, and how do I release it?
Whose intention am I carrying? That gave me chills when I read it. It implies we can be vessels for other people's malice without even knowing it.
And that we often volunteer for the job by doubting ourselves. It forces you to look at boundaries in a completely new way, not just boundaries with people, but boundaries with thoughts, with feelings. It asks, does this thought belong to me? Does this pain belong to me?
So let's recap this whole journey. We started with the no face, no case phenomenon, these invisible attacks that mimic medical issues. We walked through the 4 arenas of symptoms: physical, behavioral, emotional, and mental.
Then we discussed how looping and covert soul selling keep us trapped through our own negative self-talk, how we accidentally sign contracts with our own misery.
And finally, the solution, the return to self, breaking the contract, naming the pattern, and reclaiming sovereignty to make those symptoms just vanish.
It's a comprehensive framework, and, whether you buy into the esoteric side or not, the psychological mechanism claiming agency over your own narrative, that's undeniably powerful.
The source material actually ends with some reflection prompts, and I think these are great for our listeners to take away. If this resonated with you at all, these are the questions the author, Kandayia Ali, suggests you ask yourself.
They're very practical. The first one is, where have I noticed looping in my life? Physical symptoms, emotional reactions, or repeating situations?
So pattern recognition. Stop looking at the dots and start looking for the lines connecting them. What's the next one?
What words or phrases have I spoken over myself that may have opened portals to negativity?
That's the contract part, catching yourself saying, I'm always sick or I'm just unlucky.
Exactly. And the third one that really stood out to me was, how have I unknowingly surrendered power of my mind, body, or soul to others through doubt, guilt, or fear?
Oof. They require some deep honesty. And finally, what would return to self look like for me in this moment?
It brings it right back to the present. It's actionable. It's not about fixing the past 10 years. It's about reclaiming this minute. What can I do right now to feel like me again?
It really is. We cover a lot of topics on this show, but this one feels different. It challenges the fundamental way we view cause and effect in our own bodies.
It does. It challenges the idea that we are passive recipients of our health or our fate. It empowers you to audit your own internal dialogue.
It reminds me that sometimes the most important battles are the ones nobody else can see, and that no face, no case doesn't have to mean no hope.
And that the most powerful weapon might just be your own awareness.
Well said. We're going to leave you with one final thought from the source material to chew on. We mentioned it briefly, but I want it to be the last thing you hear.
The real question is not what disease do I have, but whose intention am I carrying and how do I release it?
Think about that. Are you carrying luggage that isn't yours? And what would happen if you just put it down? Thanks for diving deep with us today.
Take care of your sovereignty.
See you next time.